let's get into the top 10 here a little bit. I put them in order from 10 to 1, with 1 being what I consider to be the most important. There's always room for discussion on the sequence, and I'm sure in some cases there's a few things I could probably put together a top 50 list, but we got to start somewhere. So we'll start with the top 10. Number 2 is define your processes in detail. And what we look for is that you've really got good process flows, roles and responsibilities are defined. These are very instrumental in making sure everybody understands how do we want to use the system. The key here is to design processes that will really support your improved practice objectives. So don't just simply say, well, here's how we do it, and we want our system to help us do that. Now, if your practices on how you currently do it are very good and fall into the category of best practices, that's great. But typically what we find is a lot of organizations, they put these systems in place, they're in a relatively reactive organization, and their processes are fairly reactive. There's tremendous value in improving the process and then configuring the system to support that proactive process, and then thinking of all the things we talked about. Go back, train to those new processes, train to the keystrokes to do those new processes. So in the interest of moving this along, the processes we would look at as a starting point would be things like for work management, your work identification process, your approval process, planning, scheduling, completion, documentation. Remember, all of these are integrated into who's going to do it, what are the steps, what happens at different points within the CMMS. Think of these as workflow type of activities. On the materials and storeroom management side, processes would be purchasing, invoicing, payment, invoice matching, order, receiving, kitting, my min-max stock level analysis methodology and process, issuings, returns, all of that type of stuff would be processes that you should define in detail. On reliability management, maybe it's things like post-maintenance testing, technical analysis and use of the data. What are my processes for repetitive failure finding? You can, et cetera. So build these out, the process flows, the detailed descriptions, and use those process flows and descriptions to actually train your organization to those processes. The last point I'll make here is we typically find that the process of building the processes is the most important. Getting your team together to discuss in detail how is this going to work provides a significant amount of value, probably even more so than the final documentation of those processes. You learn a lot. You learn about what you have to do to really support the overall objectives. You found this interesting, some helpful points and comments, and if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.